The expansion of NATO has raised various security concerns, which have been compounded by Ukraine's push to join the organization. The bloc has assured Kyiv of unwavering support, but has delayed an invitation to Ukraine. Philani Mthembu, our director at the Institute for Global Dialogue, has been speaking about these developments.
The dilemma in further expansion from the grouping means that it has to also ask itself, what impact does expansion have on non-NATO members, right? And here, I mean, obviously, it has to also factor in what NATO expansion means to a country like Russia that is not in its, that is not part of the grouping, and that is listed as essentially an enemy of the United States. So it can't just expand perpetually and expect no reaction to take place if there is no discussions between NATO and its membership and how NATO, for instance, frames its relationship with Russia. So I think that is the crux of why NATO expansion is very contentious. You could see further hostilities. I mean, one of the reasons that in the midst of the conflict that, Ukraine, for instance, would not be admitted is that its admission would mean that NATO is now at war with Russia. And once we're talking about that, then, we're not far from essentially calling this a world war. So NATO, yes, has its own policies, its own rationale, but it has to understand what that rationale means to non-members, and it needs to have an open engagement with those non-members. The majority of the people that they kill are actually not soldiers. They kill civilians, and not only during the conflict, but years after the conflict has taken place. So we already know that it's going to have negative impacts on society moving forward, on the people who will live in those areas, not even mentioning the troops that are fighting in those grounds, but essentially years ahead. We know that children, we know that women, we know that farmers are going to be negatively affected by this.